everyone, and welcome to our guests in the public gallery. Do I have your approval to sign the minutes of the council meeting held on the 19th of December as a correct record of the proceedings? Move. Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies for absence? Lisa?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Mrs Kirby Green.
Thank you very much. Are there any disclosures by members of personal undisclosable pecuniary interest in matters on the agenda? If so, please declare the nature of any such interest and whether members regard the personal interest as prejudicial under the terms of the Code of Conduct. Councillor Maynard, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Agenda item 12. I'm an executive member of East Sussex County Council, but more importantly, I'm also a member of East Sussex County Council pension scheme and therefore a beneficiary of that. And I've considered that carefully. Because of that, I will declare a personal and pecuniary interest and will absent myself from that particular agenda item.
Thank you very much. Are there any further disclosures? Councillor Clark.
Yes, Chairman. Personal interest as a member of East Sussex County Council.
Thank you. Councillor Cortell.
Declaration of interest under agenda item 10, which is Holocaust Memorial Day. I'm of Jewish heritage.
Thank you very much. Councillor Field.
Personal interest, member of East Sussex County Council, item 12.
Thank you very much. That's lovely. Well, since the last full council meeting in December, my social calendar has been very quiet, with me only attending a couple of events, the first being Rearranged, an autumn concert by the Bexhill Choral Society on Saturday the 4th of Feb. It was at St Barnabas Church, and the concert included Schubert's Mass in A-flat and a whole host of other wonderful sounds. And it was accompanied by the Sussex Concert Orchestra. A nice evening by myself and George. The other event took place in Rye on Saturday, where Andrew and myself went along, bless him as my vice chair, but we did it together. And we'd be delighted to be invited to Love Our Rother event at the Rye Community Centre. This event brought together local, regional and national and environmental organisations and included a timetable of talks, short films, activities for all ages and a live litter survey showing how plastic pollution is recorded and how we can all join in. I would also like to take this opportunity, while my communication news is short, to share with those present this evening some background to a training event I attended last year on menopause in the workplace. It's about the improvement of women's health and healthcare in England. The discussions included priorities for the government strategy, implementation, service development, access and inclusion and research. The conference discussed the government's women's health strategy for England and next steps. Delegates looked at the priorities for improving women's health outcomes, service delivery and workforce education. This is a subject very close to my heart and one which I hope would like to see being implemented within the workplace here at Rother District Council going forward. Item number 4. Following the decision of the current Chief Executive to retire at the end of May 2023, the full Council this evening had been due to receive a report on the interim arrangements to be put in place for a period from the beginning of June until such time as a permanent successor could start. Agenda item 13. As it is intended that the post will be advertised nationally, it is felt that to assist members in making a decision, more information is needed on the process and the timetable for appointing a successor. And therefore, the report has been withdrawn and will be presented to a future full council meeting, either of this council or in the new administration. Okay, so the next item I am going to switch around because we have guests in the public gallery, and I am now going to bring up item 12.
Madam Chairman, I'll redeclare my personal pecuniary interest and I shall leave it with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillor Field?
Redeclare my personal interest.
Councillor Clark? Thank you very much. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 13, consideration be given to the motion to full council which has been submitted by Councillor Bayliss on behalf of the Rother Alliance as detailed in your agenda. Councillor Bayliss.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I stand before you today to ask that Rother District Council formalises its position and pass a motion that will call on East Sussex Pension Fund, urging them to divest from fossil fuels. Cabinet resolved in February 2020 that East Sussex County Council pension advisors be requested to source alternative investments in non-fossil fuel providers for the pension fund. However, full council has not had the opportunity to consider this, and given the climate emergency we face, now is the time to show some leadership and nail your colours to the mast. As you're all aware, the effects of climate change have become increasingly apparent in recent years, and it is imperative that we take action to mitigate this crisis. The East Sussex Pension Fund, which provides pensions to retired employees of various local authorities and public bodies, invests in companies that are involved in the extraction, production and the use of fossil fuels. Even though, and I'm sure this will be pointed out, that this is a small proportion of the funds, it still runs into several million, being used to support industries that are responsible for greenhouse gas emissions, which contribute to climate change. It's time for us to take a stand and send a clear message to East Sussex Pension Fund that we want the investments to reflect our values as a council. We cannot continue to support industries that are destroying our planet and endangering the future of generations to come. By divesting fully from fossil fuels, the East Sussex Pension Fund can send a powerful message to the fossil fuel industry that their practices are no longer acceptable. It will also provide an example for other investors to follow and encourage the growth of sustainable and environmentally friendly investments. I urge all of you to support this motion and to stand with me and my colleagues in calling for the East Sussex Pension Fund to divest fully from fossil fuels. Let us work together to create a more sustainable future for our community, our country and our planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayliss. Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to add an amendment to this motion, which is a third point, to ask the Pension Committee to ask its financial advisors to identify investments which do not rely on fossil fuels and which yield the same or more than current fossil fuel investments. Having identified appropriate investments, the Pension Committee is asked to make the change. I think it was implicit in Councillor Bayliss's motion on our behalf, but I think it needed specifying and to clarify exactly what it is we want to do. It is becoming increasingly obvious that green energy and the production of green energy is a massive area for economical growth. And I think we all agree, some of us approach things differently, but I think we all agree that economic growth is what this country needs.
Sure.
Sorry, it's what this country needs. And so we therefore must be supporting green energy, and we must not be supporting a dying industry, which is fossil fuels. Increasingly over the years, the yield they give will be less and less to the pension funds, and I think divestment will probably happen automatically. But it does need to be spurred on and kick-started now, because of the damage it is doing to our planet and the damage, the emissions caused by fossil fuel products do to ourselves, our children, our elder relations in the form of dirty air. And just think, if we had clean air, we could spend an awful lot more money in the NHS on curing people rather than just cleaning out their lungs. There are no losing things to be done from not investing in fossil fuels. So it's time not just to acknowledge a climate emergency and not just to acknowledge that something needs to be done, but actually to do something. We are committed to being carbon neutral by 2023. This is part of that strategy. We can't all do everything, but we can all do something, and we can ask those who do things on our behalf to do it in a way we would like it done for the good of the planet and for the good of ourselves and for the good of our children, our grandchildren, and those who come after us, who we will never know. But we owe it to them to make sure that they are safe when they are on this wonderful planet. So with that, I'd like to move the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Field. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. You won't be surprised that as a sole Green, I am very delighted to support the second of the motion of Councillor Field and also to support the motion of Councillor Bayliss. We all know that burning fossil fuels is the main driver of climate change, and we need massive reductions in carbon emissions to follow through on the Paris Agreement to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. Only last month, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary of State, who has already warned us that we are on red alert for climate change, told the UN General Assembly,
Councillor Gray, do apologise for interrupting, but it's about the amendment now.
Oh, I'm
The
sorry.
discussion is on the amendment.
On the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I fully support the amendment.
Thank you very much.
That's all I need to say.
Councillor Project.
Just I rise to request a recorded vote on both the amendment and the motion, the main motion.
Do we have 4 people? Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Bayliss, would you be happy to include Councillor Field's amendment as part of your motion?
Yes, I would.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayliss. So we can now take it that Councillor Field has seconded. Yes? And we take it to the vote? So now we're going to debate. Yeah.
Can I speak now? I can? I will carry on where I left off. I'm really delighted to support this motion. I was saying that only last month, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary of State, who has already warned us that we are on red alert for climate change, told the UN General Assembly, I have a special message for fossil fuel producers. Your core product is our core problem. We need a renewables revolution, not a self-destructive fossil fuel resurgence. I do know that many people are concerned about their pensions, and many of us here know how important it is to have a good pension. But fossil fuels are already being phased out, and in a few years' time, shares in them will be worthless. It makes sense to divest now and reinvest in green energy. I'd like to finish with a quote by Sir David Attenborough. finish with a quote by Sir David Attenborough, who said, "It's crazy that our banks and our pensions are investing in fossil fuel when these are the very things that are jeopardising the future that we are saving for." And finally, I would like to say a big thank you to Divest for East Sussex, in particular Gabrielle Carlisle, who've been fighting this tirelessly to bring it to public attention. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. We know that the climate crisis is one of the greatest challenges of our time. We know that global temperatures are rising and that burning fossil fuels is a major contributor to this problem. We also know that we have a responsibility to take action to protect our planet for future generations. Under this administration, we have taken a leading role in combating the climate emergency with our Zero by 2030 commitment. We have shown that reducing emissions is not only necessary, but also achievable. We have taken a leading role within the community. But what good is leadership if our actions don't match our words? East Sussex County Council have made some progress on the environment, but it remains in bad faith so long as they continue to fund fossil fuels through their pension fund. Divesting would show a tangible, ethical commitment to protecting our planet and would demonstrate to organisations across the county that this is more than just words. That is the message that we have to get across to our partners. Because I believe that a show of strength on this issue from Rother and our neighbouring authorities will make a difference. Hopefully they will listen and take action, because the risk of not acting is far greater than any risks that they could bring to us to try and stop this. So let's write to East Sussex and urge them to divest from fossil fuels. Let's show that we have the courage to act now, to secure the future for our children and to leave a legacy of hope and inspiration for generations to come. I urge every councillor to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor John Barnes.
Chairman, I have given notice of an amendment that I wish to move. The text is with Malcolm Johnston. I wish I had had notice of Catherine Field's amendment, and you will have to rule on whether my amendment follows on hers, or as it was accepted into the motion, this will be an amendment to the amended motion. What I'm proposing to do, because I believe very strongly that you don't persuade people by beginning by hitting them over the head. So I propose to delete the whole of the first bullet point in Councillor Bayliss's motion and all words after the fifth bullet point, and to add a new sixth bullet point that the East Sussex Pension Fund was highly commended for best climate change strategy in the LAPF rewards for 2021. Thereafter, I would substitute for the remainder of the motion the words, congratulates the East Sussex Pension Fund on the steps that have already been taken, both to reduce the carbon emissions represented in the portfolio, there have been substantial changes, and to invest in climate change solutions, and urges it to move more actively to consider divestment as part of its strategy to shift investment to more climate-friendly firms. In other words, I agree with the fact that we have a climate change emergency. I am urging that divestment is actively considered. But I believe you best persuade people by recognising how much has already been done and how much actually has changed already with that pension fund. There is one further point which is of importance to trustees of pension funds. I speak as somebody who has in the past been one, though I'm currently not. And that is, you have to invest to get the right return to fund your current pensioners. What East Sussex does is to look at the trajectory of the firms in which it's investing, and to see whether they are now compliant in their strategy with what is required to achieve the 1.5 carbon reduction. 3 firms so far, who are fossil fuel firms but changing rapidly, have now complied with that 1.5% target. We wouldn't want, simply because they haven't achieved it yet, to remove investment from them.
Councillor Barnes, you've run out of time, I'm afraid.
That's right.
Thank you very much indeed.
Chair, can I just on a point of clarity, my understanding is the actual motion is 2 points, which are listed on the second page, which is immediately freezing any new investment in the top 200 publicly traded fossil fuel companies, publicly committing, sorry, that was A. B is publicly committing to divest from direct ownership in any commingled funds that include fossil fuel public equities and corporate bonds within 5 years. And then the agreed addition to that was to ask the Pension Committee to ask its financial advisors to identify investments which do not rely on fossil fuels and which yield the same or more than current fossil fuel investments. Having identified appropriate investments, the Pension Committee is asked to make the change. I'm not sure, Councillor Barnes, for clarity, that, and it's for my clarity perhaps, whether your amendment is actually altering any of that or just the notes that lead up to it.
My motion actually is to delete all words after the end of the 5th clause. I would be happy to take on board Councillor Field's amendment if she cares to move it again at the end of mine, if mine is carried, because I agree with what she's actually saying. But it would remove the first 2 recommendations moved by Councillor Bayliss.
You're going to have to give me a minute because actually the bits on the bullet points are not part of the actual motion to council tonight. So if you're amending that, Councillor Barnes, then we need to be talking about that amendment.
The motion is conditional on the bullet points. What I'm agreeing with is Councillor Bayliss's diagnosis of the situation and the urgency of the situation. But my recommendation substitutes for her 2 substantive points. I'm quite prepared to add Councillor Field's point.
We're just going to adjourn just for a couple of minutes while Malcolm does some work. So chat amongst yourselves. Can you stop recording, Lisa, please?
Thank you, Chair. As I understand it, the amendment that Councillor Barnes, and you will no doubt tell me if I'm incorrect on this, is that that to replace the first 2, A and B, in the original motion with the words, the only path to protect long-term investment value and returns, that the East Sussex Pension Fund was, these are, in my view, notes to it, but that's an issue for members to take. The East Sussex Pension Fund was highly commended for the best climate change strategy. That the East Sussex Pension Fund is congratulated.
Sorry, on a point of order, the bit about the pension strategy is a bullet point. If bullet points are not part of the motion, that doesn't need to stand. The motion then begins with the words that are finally there. Put on my glasses. The motion would then begin with the congratulates.
If I may, Chair, just to, then the East Sussex Pension Fund is congratulated on the steps that have already been taken both to reduce the carbon emissions represented in the investment portfolio and to invest in climate change solutions, and we urge it to more actively to consider divestment a part of its strategy to shift its investment to climate-friendly firms. I believe Councillor Barnes has also said that the item C, which was put forward by Councillor Field, that we would ask the Pension Committee to ask its financial advisors to identify investments which do not rely on fossil fuels and which yield the same or more than the current fossil fuel investments. Having identified appropriate investments, the Pension Committee is asked to make the change. Is that correct? That will need to be seconded.
Okay, do we have a second? Councillor Drayson?
Point of order, Chairman. In my opinion, that amendment seems to negate the motion.
I've been told it doesn't. So at this point, I believe we have discussion.
Been seconded.
It has been seconded. No, Councillor Drayson didn't second it. Do we have a second? Councillor Osborne? Do we have any discussion?
On the amendment.
On the amendment? Only on the amendment. Councillor Jack.
I just want to say that in any other circumstance, we would not accept something scribbled on a bit of paper during the meeting, not quite sure, quite complicated, and we're not sure what we're voting on. So normally, this wouldn't pass muster. And Councillor Barnes knows this. And so I think that it is just a wrecking motion, and it's not actually achieving what we want to achieve.
When did you receive that amendment? Just now.
Sorry.
So what we're doing?
It's a valid amendment. So
Okay.
we need to see. But if members don't want to vote against it.
Councillor Osborne, then Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Malcolm sort of touched on what I was looking for earlier when he said that no new investments take place in fossil fuels. Sensible. Start to divest over the course of 5 years. Sensible. Councillor Barnes has added and Councillor Field as well. Probably Councillor Field added it actually. Change to green energies and invest in that, and keep the income, not just invest for the sake of it. We are talking about 90,000 ex-members of staff across the Robert district or across the whole of the South East who are relying on this income for their pensions. If that's the case, then it makes sense. I read this and you think, well, we don't need to be told that burning fossil fuel is bad for the world. We know that. And everything else. That's black and white. We've done enough sort of climate change workshops and everything else to know that burning fossil fuel is not good. I expect I'm the only person here who lives in an A-rated house. My vehicle was MOT'd last week, 1,800 miles in a year. So, don't talk to me about fossil fuels and not using energy. 8,500 miles on my bike last year. So, if there's anybody sort of in a green sort of zone, it's me. So I'm happy with the amendment, and hopefully, hopefully everybody will be on for that. I'm sort of, what I'm not at ease with is sort of making a decision that we don't really have any influence over because we don't operate the pension. But we can send, if we send a message, and it seems to me that already the pension fund is divesting, if you like, then that's the sensible way forward. And if that's what we're doing, then I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. There's one word that comes to mind about this amendment, and that's fudge. I think if this was 10, 20 years ago, we could take the softly approach. We could couch it in sort of kind words and give lots of compliments to East Sussex, and aren't they doing a brilliant job already? And we just want them to consider doing a little bit more. The climate emergency is now. We need to act now, and we need to send a strong message, a frank message, to our partners who we respect that we need them to divest from fossil fuels now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Vinehall.
I'm putting my hand up, actually, but I will speak. You're very sensitive. I'm a little unclear. Is Councillor Barnes's amendment replacing the first section of this motion? In that case, it is effectively negating the motion and should not be accepted. That is how I understand it. I stand to be corrected by anyone better in knowledge, and there's plenty of those people here, but that's how I read that. How can you just take one thing out and put another one in? An amendment is an addition to or a change in the wording.
It's a change in the wording. I've been informed it is correct.
Of order, it's a complete change in the wording.
It's still a change in the wording. Councillor Drayson.
Yes, with that in mind, Chairman, before we ever go to a vote on this, I would like the amended motion read out word for word so there's absolute clarity on what we're voting for. Thank you.
Councillor Mary Barnes, did you still want to speak?
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to say that this is something that I think I would not like to get into a situation where it is believed that on this side of the chamber we're not in agreement with the basic tenor of what Councillor Bayes is suggesting. All we're asking is that we have a more unified approach to what is the solution. I mean, we really do need to get a solution to this, which is not going to be right at this moment we actually cut it off, because we can't. We have no control over the companies that provide the pensions. Let's be sensible. Let's look again at what I think is quite, probably I'm biased, but I think a reasonable way of looking at this. And I think possibly it might have been better if we could possibly have actually had a word between all of us before we actually started appearing to not agree with what we're all hopefully going to achieve as a solution. So, I think, yes, this is not in any way a fudge. It's not in any way a way of holding up the debate. It is let's just be reasonable. Yes, we do need to get rid of fossil fuels. We're all totally in agreement with that. All we're in disagreement about is the way of doing it. So let's be sensible.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Thomas.
Chair, I'm against the amendment, and I'm against it on various grounds. Firstly, Councillor Barnes talked about hitting people over the head. I think this is totally inappropriate language to use. What is being proposed here is a traditional democratic means of trying to persuade. It's very, very different from, the implications and connotations of hitting people over the head. So on the one hand, we have the idea that it's too violent, and on the other hand, we have the idea that it's too impotent, because it's only words. And words are, of course, the first stage towards action, as the history of the suffragettes have proved, and therefore the words we say tonight are extremely important. Nor am I particularly inclined to congratulate East Sussex County Council, although in many ways there are some very good things, but East Sussex County Council Pension Fund put to us two arguments. First, the argument that it couldn't be done because there are embedded fossil fuel companies within broader remits, and secondly, that it was better to have a policy of engagement. The policy of engagement has been shown to be absolutely impotent. It was not engagement that put an end to apartheid. Engaging and talking to Putin has been an absolute failure. What actually ended apartheid was the policy of economic boycott of South Africa. And so economic measures are powerful. And so on those grounds, I don't agree with the amendment, and I hope we'll reject it and get on with talking about the main motion, which is the main issue which is facing us tonight.
Councillor Thomas. Mr Johnson is going to read out the amendment for clarity.
Can I also say, just before I do that, Chair, that if members don't agree with the amendment, then vote against it. If they do agree with it, then vote for it. That is the way we proceed, and then we will take the next steps after that. Councillor Thomas, your microphone.
Oh, sorry, ma'am.
It's not that I want to be on the broadcast, Councillor, but thank you. So the amendment, as I understand it, is it's a and I'm inserting some words here for completion, that Rother District Council congratulates the East Sussex Pension Fund on the steps that have been already taken to reduce the carbon emissions represented in the investment portfolio. I would suggest that we make two: to invest in climate change solutions, more actively consider divestment of part of its strategy to shift its investment to climate-friendly firms, and then adding that we ask the Pension Committee to ask its financial advisors to identify investments which do not rely on fossil fuels and which yield the same or more than current fossil fuel investments. Having identified appropriate investments, the Pension Committee is asked to make the change. That is my understanding of the amendment. As I said, if members are in disagreement with that amendment, then vote against it. If you're in favour, vote for it. But remember, we are voting on the amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, well, thank you. So we're going to take this to the vote. All in favour? Sorry, Councillor Barnes?
Sorry, with respect, Chairman, I have a right to reply. Chairman, I do have a right to reply, understanding orders, and I would like just to make 2 points, and they're very simple points. If we want to persuade a body that is not under our direct control to actually act in the way we want them to, you need to do it persuasively, not by actually telling them that they are a set of idiots for the way they've behaved so far. That is why I have tried to find a form of words that is most likely to achieve the impact that Councillor Bayliss and those who favour divestment wants. And this is meant in a positive and constructive way, and a way which ought to unify this chamber. And I hope very much we vote for the amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barnes. So I think we'll get to the vote now. It's a recorded vote.
No, it's not a recorded vote.
It's not a recorded vote. So we just take all those in favour of the amendment. All those against?
Sorry.
So the amendment is defeated.
So
we now return to the substantive motion.
Councillor Byrne, I think.
Is there any more debate? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. This is quite a complex motion, or could be a complex motion. However, and it could smack of gesture politics, but gestures, as Councillor Coleman has said, need to be made strong, direct, non-fudged gestures. Luckily, we are not in a position to dictate the investment of the pension fund. And I think we'd all take maybe a different view if we really were in that position. But we're not. So we have the luxury of sending a very strong message to the pension fund. And I would like to think we're also sending a strong message to two of the largest energy companies. Because two of the largest energy companies are BP and Shell. And they will remain, I think, in my opinion, as energy companies, hopefully less and less fossil fuel-based and more green energy-based. Now, you could be cynical about that, but they're in the business of making money. And if the demand for oil goes down, and as Councillor Osborne said, if we stop doing the miles, if we stop doing the flying, if we stop doing the travelling, the demand will go down. So in order to maintain their profits, they will have to continue on the road they've already taken. Shell is the largest supplier of green energy in this country. BP has made massive investment and done a lot of research into the production, the large-scale production of green hydrogen for vehicles coming down the track, yeah. So it would be short-sighted if we were actually on the board of either of those two companies It would be short-sighted of us to say we're going to get rid of two large corporations who are in a position to invest in green energy. We're going to do that by requiring to do it immediately with no forward plan. But we're not in that position. We're in a position of making this a strong, very strong recommendation. Now, it's great to see the amount of public support for this motion, but I would love to see similar support for other, maybe more practical green motions. I don't know how many of you realise, but British Volt, which was a company that was trying to be set up in Northumberland, which would have provided something like 1,200 jobs, would have brought the battery industry to Britain and secured a lead position for us. That didn't get government backing, and therefore it didn't get private investment backing. So I would love to see a similar support for that sort of action. So let's not just tell the government what we don't want them to do. Let's tell them what we do want them to do.
Councillor Byrne, thank you very much. We've literally got 4 minutes left to finish
Fine,
this and
okay.
take a vote.
Well, thank you, but please support me.
Thank
government
you.
for British Volt.
So now we're going to take a recorded vote. We literally have 3 minutes left to finish off this section out of the 30 minutes to move it forward. Okay. We have 2.5 minutes left of this session.
Chair, can I point out that you didn't take a seconder at the beginning of this motion, and I was supposed to be seconding. So I was assuming I would have the right to speak at this point, and I would like to speak for the correct time for a seconder, which I believe is 3 minutes. Please.
We've got 2 minutes left to finish the session. If you'd like to second it, I'd really appreciate that, Councillor Thomas.
Chairman, if I may, the Council's procedure rules say there is a period of 30 minutes for a motion to be debated. We are now at 29 minutes and 28 minutes and 19 seconds. So, yeah, and I think, to be quite honest, all we're going to do, if I may say, is get the same points being made over again. Why don't we just take the votes and then we can wrap it up in the time scale? Thank you.
So if we could take a vote, please record a vote. Lisa?
Thank you, Chairman. So members, I'll be calling out your names one at a time in alphabetical order. Just the members in the room will be voting.
Chair, point of order. I'm very dissatisfied with this proceeding, frankly. It's not right to assume that all the arguments have been put. That's an assumption, and it can only be actually tested in the debate. A seconder wasn't taken and should have been taken, and therefore I think I have the right to speak, and should speak for the normal length of time. It's a simple kind of minor procedural error, but it should be corrected, please.
I thought Councillor Field said she was seconding this, so would I be correct? Councillor Field did second, so.
I did say, yes.
Sorry, we'll have to go to the vote. The time's up, so we'll do a recorded vote. Lisa, please.
It's for this, just to be clear, it's the substantive amendment.
It's a substantive amendment.
So the substantive motion, Chair.
This is.
We could clarify or perhaps vote on clarification, because we spent an awful long time on a failed amendment. And does that count within the motion? We voted on amendment, and that's the time on the amendment has been spent without the people debating the motion.
Chair, for clarity, if I may, when Councillor Field moved her amendment, it was agreed by Councillor Bayliss that it would be included as part of the substantive motion, which he is perfectly entitled to do. So therefore, there was no amendment. It was part of the substantive motion. An amendment was made, the discussion was held, and that amendment was lost. But it is all part of the same overall motion. So we've come back to the original motion, which I'm very happy to read out for members. It's in your papers, but with the addition of Councillor Field's addition, which said, ask the Pension Committee to ask its financial advisors to identify investments which do not rely on fossil fuels and which yield the same or more than current fossil fuel investments. Having identified appropriate investments, the Pension Committee is asked to make the change. That is the substantive motion before the committee, for full council, forgive me, tonight. And that is the motion on which you're being asked to carry out a recorded vote on. We're taking the vote now.
Thank you, Chair. Members, I shall read out your names one at a time, alphabetically order. Please answer for, against or abstain. Councillor John Barnes.
Reluctantly against.
Councillor Mrs Barnes.
Microphones, please.
Just say for. Members, can you just please answer for, against or abstain? Thank you.
Against.
Councillor Bayliss. For. Councillor Brewerton. Councillor Brown. Councillor Byrne. For. Councillor Carroll. Councillor Clark. For. Councillor Coleman.
For.
Councillor Mrs Cook.
For.
Councillor Courtell. Councillor Curtis. Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Drayson.
For.
Councillor Mrs Earl Williams. Councillor Errington.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Ganley. Councillor Gordon. Councillor Gray. Councillor Hacking. Councillor Harmer.
For. For.
Councillor Langlands.
For.
Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Mear.
For.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Norton.
For.
Councillor Oliver.
For.
Councillor Osborne. Councillor Proshak.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
Abstain.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
Councillor Timpey.
For.
Councillor Vinehall.
For.
That motion is carried. Thank you very much. And if any members of the public would like to leave now, and if you don't want to listen to the rest of our intensive business, enjoy your dinners. Thank you very much. So now I'll just give you a minute or so while the public gallery clears. Okay, people, so we're now on to item number 5, and I'd like to welcome Mr Brown to the meeting. Sorry we have to wait a little while tonight, Mr Brown. And about the written question and answer has been circulated to all members. Mr Brown, would you like to read out your question in full?
I'm quite happy for the question to have been read by everybody.
Thank you very much. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. Oops, hold on. Someone's put my jacket pocket in my chair. I didn't do that on purpose. Thank you very much indeed, and good evening, Mr Brown, and I hope that you're in better health than when we last corresponded. So nice to see you here. The answer, the original contract awarded to Brahimi was 4.1 million, and it has been noted by the questioner that this figure has increased and currently projected to be in the region of 8.7 million. There have been a number of instructed changes in relation to this contract, which, while they were not included in the original Brahimi scope, were budgeted for as part of the wider infrastructure works. This includes £1 million worth of utilities, as well as a retaining wall structure that was originally due to be delivered by the housing contractor. Therefore, it is more appropriate to view the infrastructure enablement works as a whole rather than the isolating the Brahini contract on the Spine Road. The original budget for the land acquisition, site enablement works, Spine Road and associated professional fees was £12.2 million. These costs, due to a number of changes related to the design requirements for embankment works and drainage, as well as greater than anticipated land acquisition and professional fees, is now £15.8 million. This represents a cost change of £3.6 million, and a full review of the housing development option is being undertaken by the company to ensure the overarching scheme remains viable and cost neutral to the council. There's only one contract that the East Sussex Procurement Hub were involved in between Brahini and Rother. That was the reference at ESPH 386. The contract signing was handled by Bailey Garner.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Mr Brown, do you wish to put a supplementary question to Councillor Oliver?
I do, Madam Chairman. I thank the leader for explaining that, however it is put, the Blackfriars project is 3.6 million over budget. The one contract in existence is priced at 4.1 million and does include the words, the Spine Road in its entirety. It was clear at the December council meeting the leader was unaware of any major cost overrun. Why before tonight has this not been reported to members of the council? Who is really responsible and accountable for the largest project this council is undertaking? And when will the result of the review of the housing development options be announced? When will elected members regain control of this project?
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you for the supplementary question. This matter was raised with officers looking after this project, and there will be a full detailed report coming forward. So I think the points that you asked, Mr Brown, will be answered at that point.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver, and thank you, Mr Brown. Feel free to leave the meeting, or you're very welcome to join us. Question 2 we have from, Mr Leslie Seymour. Do we have him here with us tonight? Or remotely? No, we don't have that. Okay, so we go to item 6. To answer questions from members of the council, in accordance with paragraph 11 of the council procedure rules, a time limit together of 30 minutes. Question 1 is from Councillor Coleman to Councillor Oliver. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I'll read my question out for clarity. When I was elected in 2019, Sidley was deprived of sporting facilities. Our cricket club played in Hastings. Our football club played in Hoo. The nearest skate park was unsafe. The BMX track was in serious need of improvements. And the old changing rooms on Sidley Rec sat closed. Can the leader of the council outline for the record what improvements have been delivered to sports provision in Sidley since this administration took office?
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Without a doubt, all that's gone on in Sidley has been a wonderful success story. The BMX and skateboard park, 870,000 approximately, and what a wonderful collaborative project that was, bringing in funding from various sources. I think members were involved with this at the early stage. Officers have been involved with this, and they've gone out there and generated this wonderful state-of-the-art facility. The town's long-running BMX club is now able to expand its coaching scheme, can once again hold BMX events. Young people in around the whole of Bexhill area and farther afield in Rother come to use these facilities because it's a wonderful facility that's actually come forward. So much extra work will be done on it, cars, lighting, tree planting, enable the whole community to better use. And I believe that this is a wonderful project. And I would like to record that the officer who brought all this together, Rebecca Owen, needs to be acknowledged for making this work under very, very difficult conditions. On top of that, as the government does from time to time, it throws money at local authorities but doesn't give you a lot of time in which to build and bring forward propositions. But the public open space at Sidley House, being planned for delivery this year, funded through the government Levelling Up Parks Fund, is the opportunity, and we will just one of 85 local authorities eligible for this. It brought the opportunity to deliver, again, improvements to the children's play area and improve the usability of the green space community through the provision of seating, tree planting and improved access. This was an £85,000 fund. The great thing about this, again, and I must acknowledge Rebecca Owen again, along with Deborah Keneally, brought this project together in very, very quick time. And that's about working together and identifying what we can do. Otherwise, we'd have had to let that opportunity disappear. And I suppose the most exciting thing that's going to be happening going forward is the Levelling Up Fund, where Sidley Recreation Ground will deliver community facilities at the heart of Sidley. For the recreation ground, for the playing facilities there, which is coming forward. So these are just wonderful things that have happened in Sidley, and it's happened because there's been an intent to happen with members and officers saying, we will deliver, and making sure that we got there. The vision of the component is to connect Sidley with the Delaware going forward to provide wider routes to education. So, yeah, it will make Sidley Recreation Ground the hub of local life, provide a 3G playing surface for local clubs, improve toilet facilities to the disabled, parent-friendly, provide a sustainable community space for local residents and community organisations, increase local resident services, and to work with the organisation Heart of Sidley, who have really thrown themselves into this and said, we want to deliver. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's a long-term legacy for Sidley. And I hope that that basically answers your inquiry, and that all members are familiar with this, because it is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Coleman, do you wish to put a supplementary question to Councillor Oliver?
I do, yes, please, Chair. Thank you, and thank you for that, Councillor Oliver. I think that response highlights what an incredible job this administration has done, and what an incredible record of delivery in Sidley this administration has. Despite, and I must say, a pandemic and global and financial uncertainty. However, Gulliver's Sports Ground, which was once the sports and cultural hub of Sidley, currently remains disused and in the ownership of a private housing developer. Will the Leader of the Council commit to making sure every option is explored in time for the next administration to consider, including the possibility of purchasing the land for sports and recreation, and that steps are taken in the meantime to address the trespassing and fire safety issues with the derelict club building currently still on the site? Thank
you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair, and to respond to my colleague. It's an impressive record in Sidley. We've gone through a global pandemic, uncertainty, and within Sidley there's this 4-acre site which, in hindsight, perhaps the local authority perhaps could have purchased originally when that became vacant. But it wasn't the case. So we've now got this derelict site, 4 acres, tucked within the community at Sidley. Yet I think it's important that any administration going forward should be seeking with officers to say, how can we explore every option in order to use this area? We know that it's in commercial ownership, but we must look at these opportunities. But early on, we must now identify the health and safety aspects of this area. Fires are a regular occurrence there, from what I can gather. We have a situation where it is overgrown and it must be a health hazard. I think that any future administration must basically identify this. I have lovely memories of the Gulliver site at Sidley, because I was brought up in Sidley as a young child back in the 50s and 60s. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to rekindle these facilities as best we're able to, or provide the residents of Sidley, not with a derelict site of 4 acres, but let's do something with it. Let's make a commitment. So let's go forward, and I really hope that this is something that we can explore as whatever administration is there into the next council year. Thank you. I hope that answers some of your inquiries.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. And we move on to question 3 from Councillor Gangley to Councillor Oliver. Councillor Gangley, would you like to read the question in full?
Won't be necessary, but I would like Councillor Oliver to read out his reply. May I add that it's clear from the previous question that election campaigning has started?
Councillor Oliver.
Sorry, I didn't catch what you said at the end there, Councillor Bennett.
Election campaigning has started, apparently, given the last question and answer.
Well, it's interesting to see the questions that have come from that side of the floor tonight. It's obviously the open season. Because, in fact, if you have read the scrutiny minutes of the 18th of July, all your points were answered there by the senior officer responsible for that reply. But I'll go through it all again. It's not a problem there at all. But I would have thought you would have had this answer. But obviously part of the season is to ask these questions again and again and again. The original budget approved by Council and added to the Council's capital programme was $460,000. At that time, this budget was approved and it was a reasonable expectation of the costs for the anticipated works. There have been some key additional costs that have been incurred, which were not included in the original scope, but have been identified as necessary by the by the design team, or driven by the other resourcing issues. The necessary additional spend was authorised in line with the Council's financial procedure rules, and the Chief Finance Officer was notified. In accordance with the financial procedure, Rule G40, the Chief Financial Officer reported the projected overspend at the first appropriate opportunity, which was on the 18th of July 2022, at the committee meeting of that date. And it was updated and then reported to Cabinet on the 25th of July 2022. Supplementary to this, additional updates were reported to the revenue budget and the capital programme monitoring report to overview and scrutiny. For the quarter 2 on the 21st of November 2022 and the quarter 3 report to Cabinet on the 6th of February 2023. As we know, the project has been put on hold until after the elections of this year and will be a matter of consideration for any new council. All substantive spend has now been processed and the project and the subject to a couple of small outstanding invoices. There will be no significant change to the final figures. So to quote what government civil service like to tell us, this is oven ready to come forward. Everything the spend has been done is ready to happen if that's the wishes of council going through in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Gangley, do you wish to put a supplementary question to Councillor Oliver, arising out of the answers given?
Yes, so is the scheme going to be put in your manifesto?
Councillor Oliver.
No.
Thank you very much. Question 4. Again from Councillor Gangley. To Councillor Giowan. Councillor Gangley, would you like to read out your question in full? Thank you very much. Councillor Giowan, welcome to the meeting. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So, the financial, just for clarity, the financial stability programme is, from a cabinet perspective, the oversight is provided by Councillor Dixon, but I will read the response to the question. So, in response to the question, there is not a line-by-line breakdown of the 1.106 million, hence the bottom of Appendix E refers to the FSP savings to be identified during 23-24. If these savings are not achieved by then, all other things being equal, the Council's usable revenue reserves balance would reduce by this figure. However, this is neither the intention or expectation of the Chief Finance Officer and the senior leadership team, or indeed Cabinet. Furthermore, paragraphs 13 and 15 of the draft revenue budget proposal reports to Cabinet on the 6th of February 23 set out very clearly how officers will approach this. There are two main areas of savings having clearly been identified as a devolution of non-discretionary services and savings by a service planning exercise. I'm happy to reaffirm the report to Cabinet that confirmed that this work is well underway and initial reports confirm that the savings will be met. Plans and details will be shared with members once they are sense-checked, ratified and agreed by the senior leadership team. It should be noted that the project reserves figure is within 64,000 of the projected amount presented to Cabinet for budget setting in 2019-2020, this is the point before the last election. Of course, we have had the COVID pandemic, which cost the council an extra £500,000 in lost revenue and extra expense. The Chief Finance Officer has been very clear throughout the budget setting process that the intention is to ensure that usable revenue reserves remain above 5 million as a minimum, and this aim has not changed. Paragraph 26 of the aforementioned report also sets out how the council intends to achieve this, but it is also worth referring back to paragraph 36 of the draft revenue budget proposals report to Cabinet on the 9th of January 23, which explains that there is a clear expectation on behalf of central government that councils will continue to use reserves to fund services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gio. Councillor Ganley, would you like to put forward a supplementary question?
I would, Chairman. Yeah. So, am I right in thinking, therefore, that you don't actually know where you can make the actual, precisely where you can make the actual savings that are necessary?
Councillor Gio.
No, I don't think that's a fair appraisal of the situation. I think the answer that I've given clearly states that there isn't a line-by-line breakdown to show that. However, that could be achieved in terms of the savings that are proposed. The officers have been working extremely hard behind the scenes to ensure that our financial stability remains intact. And I have confidence that the information being provided by the CFO and the direction of travel puts us in line to where we need to be. The budget reserve, again, as I stated, is within 64,000 of the projected figure, which I think is a real achievement considering the challenges the council has faced. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johan. And on to question 5, again from Councillor Ganley. What a busy, busy boy you are tonight. Councillor Ganley to Councillor Byrne. Councillor Ganley, would you like to read out your question in full?
This boy would pass on that.
Okay, so Councillor Byrne, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just so we know what we're talking about, I'll read the questions out for you, Councillor Ganley. Essentially, you were asking, you said since the inception of the housing company, the need for external directors has never been disputed. And no external directors have been appointed. Why not, and when will they be appointed? The answer is that the Council is currently supporting the company to recruit non-executive directors of the housing company. But let's wind that out a bit. Why are we looking for non-executive directors? We're hoping for people to come with outside views, to bring other viewpoints to the board of the housing company. Now, currently, the housing company is still really in its infancy. It only has one project, admittedly a massive project, but the direction of travel for that project is already set. I think we're looking for these external directors to look at the way in which the housing company will go forward, the projects that it will consider undertaking and the strategy it will adopt to undertake those. So I think it's quite reasonable to say that we are still looking, and probably we're getting a clearer idea of the sort of talent we're seeking in these non-executive directors. So yes, they will be appointed, and yes, the council and the officers are assisting the housing company in looking for the appropriate people to be appointed as non-executive directors. Secondly, you asked, there is a desperate need for an up-to-date business plan for the housing company. Well, the original business plan, a mighty tome, I might add, came into the public domain on Monday the 7th of September at the Cabinet meeting. It was presented Cabinet as I say, on the 7th of September 2020. Yes, various things have changed since then, and yes, an up-to-date business plan is coming forward in the light of many, many changes, again, centring around the Blackfriars development. We have the amazing hike in building materials, and we have the whole situation, the whole setting for that project has changed remarkably since its inception for all sorts of different reasons. But the cost of building materials is probably the major one that is causing a rethink. And yes, there will be another business plan coming forward with the detail that I hope will satisfy your question. When will the revised plans for Blackfriars be submitted to the Planning Committee? When we've got a full revision of the plan, which we feel will be practical in terms of viability and conform to the situation that's developing with the problems with the spur road. So when a business plan comes forward, it will answer all these questions, and it will be a business plan that looks at the situation now, not the situation that it was back in September 2020. Now, the last bit was, what is the maximum borrowing requirement for the construction cost of the Blackfriars development? Well, the Council, as you know, has approved a line of credit up to 80 million for the housing company. And there is no projection that this project will need to come for an extra line of credit. But it is a line of credit. The company is not borrowing 80 million. The Council is not lending the company 80 million. As the business plan develops, the cost will become clearer. The borrowing requirement will be then called off from this 80 million facility. But as yet, there is no need, we don't see a need, for increasing that 80 million line of credit. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Gangley, do you wish to put a supplementary question to Councillor Byrne, rising out of the answer given?
Yes, I'd be interested to know where, given that 1,000 houses are proposed, where would the other 800 be built?
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Yes, when the housing company was set up, it was set up with the vision that it would, in the fullness of time, provide 1,000 houses. The first project that we're now talking about is to deliver 200 homes at Blackfriars. The number of 1,000 was really arrived at by looking at the 5-year land supply that we have to provide to government, and it was a very broad brush look at the sort of project we felt that the housing company will be undertaking. So you say exactly where. Of course I can't give that answer. Those answers will become clear as and when individual planning applications are submitted. But I don't see any reason to doubt that the housing company, during its lifetime, will in fact deliver 1,000 new homes by 2035. I probably won't be alive then, but I see no reason to doubt that will be forthcoming, and I'm sure the housing company has confidence as well that will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. And we now move on to item 7, to receive the report of the Cabinet on matters for determination by full Council at its meeting held on the 9th of January and 6th of February 2022. As under Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that, with the exception of minutes CB 22/66 being the draft revenue budget proposals for 23-24, that shall be taken on agenda item 8. The report of the meetings held on the 9th of January and the 6th of February 2023 be approved and adopted.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Councillor. If members wish to reserve an item for discussion, please indicate as I call over. CB 22/60, Temporary accommodation investment strategy update. CB 22/67, Rother Health and Wellbeing Leisure Facilities Strategy. CB 22/68, Old Lid Road Council-led Housing Development. Thank you. CB 22/69, Members Allowances Scheme 2023-2027. Councillor Dixon. CB 22/70, Designation of Interim Chief Finance Officer. CB 22/71, Levelling Up Funding. Councillor Project. Thank you very much. I move that the whole of the report, with the exception of the reserved minutes, be approved and adopted. I shall now proceed to deal with the reserved minutes. Sorry, I do apologise. Could I take a vote the whole of the report, please? Thank you very much. So, CB 22/68, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, this involves Canberra, of which Councillor Hackett and I look after. So I just basically reiterate what I said at Cabinet. This is excellent news. In my opinion, this is excellent news for Canberra. I will say it is proving to be a slightly difficult sell to the residents who, for some reason, prefer a car park to 10 houses. So we are trying to sort of sell it to them in the 10 houses, and hopefully we can get them so that they're all available for locals in perpetuity, to assist local people or people close to Canberra to have a home. At the moment, we are looking at something about 38 to 40% of all properties in Canberra are now second homes or holiday lets, and every time something comes up for sale, the price flies. No one can afford to buy them, except if you're going to use them for holiday lets or a second home. So if this site can be 100% affordable, not second homes or rental properties, but available to locals, that has got to be a good thing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. So we'll take this to the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Barnes, John Barnes.
Yes, I just hope in the reply to Councillor Osborne we might have some indication why this property has not been transferred to the housing company.
We will supply an answer, Councillor Barnes. But shall we take this to the vote? All those in favour?
May I just say to Councillor Barnes that I'll be happy to reply to him in writing when I've done a bit more research on exactly that situation.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. And then we lead on to minutes CB 22/69, Members Allowance Scheme. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman. As you will know, this was discussed at Cabinet a couple of weeks ago, and Cabinet was not satisfied with the scheme as presented by the IRP. The reasons for that are that the reductions in the special responsibility allowances for cabinets and spokespersons are unjustified, given the work that these roles entail. There's also a clear distinction between the heavy workloads of the Planning Committee and the Scrutiny Committee, and the relatively light workloads in comparison of licensing and audit. The ratios suggested by the IRP do not reflect this. We do support a small allowance for Planning Vice Chair, and also support a small allowance for the Scrutiny Vice Chair for the same reasons. The proposal for the political group leaders was unfair, as just giving one basic rate to all group leaders, because a group of 2, there is a lot less work to do than a group of 15, for example. Therefore, a simplified solution to this would be recognised a higher allowance for the leader of the opposition group, which would obviously have the most councillors within it, and smaller ones to any other group leaders. The car mileage allowance is illogical as recommended by the IRP. They are suggesting an allowance of 20 pence for bicycles, but only 8 pence for electric cars, and we should obviously be encouraging the use of electric cars. Therefore, that needs to change. It's acknowledged that it's unlikely that all special responsibility allowances will be paid, as there are often councillors doing more than one role. And it's also acknowledged that we could go further with allowances to encourage people to stand as councillors, but our budget simply does not allow that at this time. So the amendments I'd like to propose, and these are amendments that then are delegated to the Chief Executive for including in the Constitution, are that allowances be pegged at ratios based on the standard council allowance as per the recommendation in the IRP report. The standard council allowance be increased by 5% as per the IRP report. The ratios for allowances, however, be adjusted to the table that I circulated to councillors this afternoon. Political group leaders' allowances be changed from the IRP report, and the largest opposition group leader should be paid a higher rate and any other group leaders a lower rate. All car mileage, regardless of fuel, be paid at 45 pence per mile. The newly formed HR committee be asked to look at detail of childcare and meal allowances to ensure they cover costs incurred, and that the amounts be confirmed for 23-24 with a further decision as to what happens from then to be taken by the new council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Shall we take this to the vote? Seconder, please. Apologies.
I'd like to second it, but if I could just make a comment and thank Councillor Dixon for going through the IRP report, because there's an awful lot in it, and I think we've all looked at it and identified what the key features of that were. I'd like to thank those members that also communicated with Councillor Dixon in order to shape the proposals that have come forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I think that whilst I would agree with some of the proposals that Councillor Dixon has put forward, I think there's a fundamental issue here at stake which does deeply concern me, and that is in the past, and in the 20-odd years that I've been on the council, I don't ever remember such a degree of amendments to the recommendation of the Independent Remuneration Panel. And for me, at least, I think one of the fundamental cornerstones of the work that the IRP do is, well, the clue's actually in the name, because it's the Independent Remuneration Panel. And I think in terms of transparency with the general public, it's not only, as we always do across the chamber, we always acknowledge the work that those that put the hours in on the Independent Remuneration Panel, interviewing councillors and then putting forward proposals periodically to the council. But I'm quite concerned that, from a layperson watching this on the net would say, well, here we are, councillors setting their own allowances, not the Independent Remuneration Panel, which is there to do exactly that. So, to be perfectly blunt, I think that if there is a problem in a number of areas which Councillor Dixon and others have identified, then perhaps we need to take a step back and look at the way that the IRP have interfaced with councillors, because I don't think it's fair to just say that's wrong, that's wrong. We need to look at it a little bit more dispassionately and perhaps pragmatically in terms of actually looking at the way that the IRP have engaged with councillors and perhaps how they should engage in the future. We all know that they only interview a small number of councillors, not every councillor, and I appreciate that, quite frankly, that it would be an enormous piece of work to interview every councillor. But perhaps in the way that we interface with the IRP, that perhaps if you had proposals and then you could talk about those proposals rather than do the interviews and here's what's happening, perhaps that would be better. But for me, as I say, fundamentally to try and unpick the work that the IRP have done, even if I agree with some of the comments that have been made in the amendment, I am distinctly uncomfortable in supporting such a long list of changes when in fact it is then very, very clearly councillors in this chamber who are deciding upon their own allowances. And that, for me, sets a dangerous precedent. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillor John Barnes.
Chairman, I share those doubts. I'm not going to repeat them. It seems to me that if you think the IRP have got it wrong, the answer is to ask them to reconvene and consider fresh evidence. And in the meantime, to put the changes into practice. It particularly worries me. I know it's only a small increase over what the IRP is saying, but it is an increase. And I have to say, at the end of the day, I am distinctly uncomfortable with politicians setting their own expense allowances. That doesn't mean I disagree with what Councillor Dixon is saying about many of the changes, although I have to say I felt myself rather uncomfortable with his suggestion of 40p allowance flat rate for electric cars. We want to encourage them, but I'm not sure. I know what the figure should be, but to put it exactly the same as the internal combustion, I'd far rather actually reduce the internal combustion rate. But that's, again, something which we ought not to be doing. It really is, I think, for the remuneration panel to determine this. And we took it out of political control precisely because of the expenses scandal. I do not like actually amending an ILP recommendation.
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for my reply. I do agree to a degree with the gentleman who's spoken opposite. It is not the thing to do to mess around too much with this. But I take the point with that Councillor Maynard makes that he's never seen so many suggestions of changes. I've never seen so many suggestions of changes by the IRP before. There's a complete change of approach from them. I think there was only a few councillors that were spoken to, and certainly I was on the panel, certainly some of the questions they asked did not relate to anything that they have now then changed. So I'm not quite sure where they've got some of their information and some of their reasoning from. And in relation to the car rates, they were given incorrect information that they could only charge we could only charge 8 pence. Actually, that is if you have a company car and a reclaiming fuel. If you have your private car, the HMRC then says it's 45 pence for a car, regardless of its fuel. So that is just going back to what it should have been. They were wrongly advised. Apart from that, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, your leader was invited along to the meeting, but unfortunately he couldn't make it and didn't send a deputy along. So the meeting that we had with the IRP did discuss some of these things, and as a result of it, they went away and they come back with other things. So given the fact that this has been out in the public domain for some little while, I see no reason why you could not have made those observations prior to this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Shall we go to the... Could we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Pojak. Can we go to the vote? All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Oh. That's carried. Thank you very much. And we move on to CB 22/71, Levelling Up Fund. Councillor Pojak.
Thank you. I just called this one because I'm sure all members now know that we were successful in this bid. And I think it tells the story about several things, about Rother, about this council, The first thing it tells us is that poverty, low income, isn't just up north, that it's actually patches all over the southeast of poverty. And so, again, Sidley deserves some of this investment, which will be extraordinary for Sidley. The other thing it tells us is that councils are actually what's called the cornerstones of culture. And I recommend to you an LGA report, independent report, called The Cornerstones of Culture. And just to remind you, because some people deny us of culture being actually any particular use in our society, but this report, the investigation, loads of examples and statements, they found a vibrant cultural life creates jobs, supports health and well-being, enhances learning, opens up opportunities for young people, draws people to the high street, underpins the visitor and nighttime economies, and supports the growing creative industries, and helps to make places unique. And my goodness, the Delaware makes Rother unique. It's not just Bexhill, it's right across Rother that the benefits of this investment will be found. The other thing it tells us is that the government would not, never would not have invested unless they had confidence, a financial confidence in this council. And that is a real tribute. We've heard tonight about other grants that we've obtained. We didn't mention Camber Toilets, but that's another grant that we hope to obtain. And so we are successful at bidding for and getting grants because they have a trust in us. It's going to be a difficult one to deliver, I know, because it's a short time scale. The other thing I would like to say is such congratulations to our officers who actually did the most amazing work to get this bid over the line. And one of the things that the assessors of the bid said, that it was a really solid bid. And so I think I would like to mention specifically Ben and his team and Melanie Powell particularly. Also, of course, Stuart, who runs the Delaware. They worked together on this to produce this really successful result. I would also like to add a really huge thanks to our MP, Hugh Merriman. Remember that this was constituency-led. So if nothing happened in Hastings and Rye, it's because Hastings and Rye are not in our constituency. And so a great thank you to Hugh Merriman, who got behind the bid, supported the bid, and really lobbied for us. And that's my thank you to him.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kojak. Councillor Timpey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to add, I've had several councillors, town councillors and the public asking me, well, gosh, you've got 19 million, so why can't you do this and why can't you do that? And it needs to be made very, very clear that these are monies for two projects. So if you are asked by your residents, well, why can't some of that come over here? It can't, because it would be illegal for it to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Timpey. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go on too much about how exciting this fund is for Sidley, because I've already done it in many meetings and in my question earlier, although anytime Sidley's on the agenda, I'm always happy to speak about it. I wanted to touch on Councillor Proshak's point there, both about in terms of areas of deprivation and also culture and the arts. And as someone who is working class, whose main profession is in the arts, this has always been something that I've always been very interested in looking at the roadblocks to getting more people from working class backgrounds into the arts, into culture, because actually we have a very enriching culture from working class backgrounds. If you come to Sidley, and I invite everyone to come to Sidley, the microphone apparently doesn't, I invite you to look at the amazing street art on the graffiti wall by the skate park, or to go online and listen to some of the amazing music artists that we have in Sidley. Rappers, musicians, incredible, wonderful pieces of music coming straight out of the heart of Sidley. I invite you, when we have events like Coastal Currents, to go around some of the open studios in Sidley and see some of the amazing art. And of course, you're welcome to look at any of my body of work if you wish. But culture is really important, and I quite often get the message from a few people, oh, Rother District Council are wasting lots of money on art galleries and culture and the Delaware when they should be spending it on whatever other priorities people may have. But actually, spending that money in culture and in arts and enriching culture and the arts then enriches people, and it enables people to express themselves creatively, and that can make a real difference and tangible difference to people's lives. I remember when I was told as a kid, you want to be an actor? No, you won't get any money from that. You need to be rich to be an actor. You need to go to Eton. You need to go to Oxford. You need to study at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts and major in Shakespeare before you become an actor. And, you know, when I think about my friends who are musicians and looking at things like the East Sussex Music Service when that was in its prime, that really enabled people to look at industries beyond just sort of menial labour and beyond a specific box that working class people are often put in. So I encourage everyone to really support this, get behind this. Thank you to Hugh Merriman. Thank you to Melanie Powell and to Ben and his team. It's a real steal that we managed to get this because it's a really hard bid to apply for. So we should all be really proud of this as a council. And be proud of culture and be proud of art and be proud of the Delaware. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Osborne, you forgot, didn't you?
No, not at all. Thank you, Chairman. No, I think I'll mention Melanie Powell again and Ben. Prior to the scrutiny meeting of a couple of weeks ago, they gave us a presentation on the bid and the winning of the bid. And Melanie sort of explained it really well in that the parameters for putting a bid were quite tight. Had to be a constituency boundary that tied up with a district council boundary. So, we asked the question, well, if Rye had, and we couldn't, Rye and Hastings could not, because Rye and Hastings are split constituency, well, not split constituency, but the district council or the council is. So Hastings couldn't necessarily bid for Hastings and Rye, because Rye is in Rother. And Rye couldn't bid because Hastings is Hastings. So it was she explained it really well, and I'm not, so unfortunately. But it's useful because a few hours after that meeting, I bumped into 3 ex-mayors of Rye Town Council who were actually out and about. And they said, oi, why has Bexhill got 19 million quid and Rye hasn't got anything? So I was totally tuned and I explained them exactly why. And I won't say they were happy, but they understood the position. So I kept them on side. But I think it was an easy thing to bid for, and it was very specific to constituency boundaries and district council areas and everything else. So the government never make it easy, but this time we got somewhere. So thank you. And well done to everybody.
Very well put. Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Do we have a second? Oh, Colin, Councillor Bailey.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I'd just like to just comment on what Councillor Osborne said, because I think when the UK shared prosperity funding is announced, which is the replacement for the European funding, you may find actually that Rye is a sort of big beneficiary from that. So, it's watch this space, I think, for Rye.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd certainly like to second this, but I would just like to point out that the Living Up bid, from what I can gather, there were 3 specific areas. One was the town centre regeneration, and you had to have something ready to go, and we hadn't got that. The other one was transport, and that's really for the unitaries and the larger units in county councils. And the only other one that we had an opportunity for, that we'd done some work on, was obviously leisure and culture. And I think that's what really got us over the line. And the correspondence that we've had did indicate this is a very, very strong bid. I think we acknowledge our officers and our members that actually worked to get to that. So I think it's just a wonderful success story again for everyone to look forward to and share. Whatever administration is there after May, we can all share the enjoyment of going forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Oliver. So we've had it seconded. Shall we go to the vote? All those in favour? Votes are unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. So now we go on to item 8, which is the budget 2023-24, to consider and, if thought fit, to pass a resolution in the terms set out in the report. In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 17.5b, a vote by roll call can be taken when setting the Council's budget. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Council Procedure Rules 15.4, content and length of speeches, and item 15.5, where a member may speak again, be waived for discussion of this item.
Second.
Very much. And then we go over to item 9. Sorry? Sorry, Councillor Oliver, call it to move. Call you to move the Cabinet report, please, Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman. And in Councillor Giawan's absence, as he answered a question for me, I'll present the budget for him. Our emphasis again is on the ongoing financial challenge, which the Council is under and will be under still for some considerable years. However, the previous Chief Financial Officer, the current Interim Chief Financial Officer, myself, Councillor Giawan and the Cabinet are absolutely sure that we are well placed to meet the challenges in 2023, 2024 and beyond. You were asked to approve third and final budget phase that we are going through, and there is a list on the Cabinet report which I shall read. That the next expenditure of 16.705 million for 23-24, as detailed in Appendix A of the Cabinet report, be approved. The updated capital programme set out in Appendix C be approved. The level of special expenses as set out in Appendix D be approved. The amount of usable revenue reserves set out in Appendix F be approved. The council tax for 23-24 at a Band D property be increased by £5.22 per year, 2.7%, and set at £198.60. The offer of £1.5 million capital funding from the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, contingent on match funding from the councils, be noted and approved. The Head of Service Housing Community be granted approval for matched funding from the £9 million already included in the updated capital programme, to purchase temporary accommodation to accommodate homeless households and be granted delegated authority in consultation with the portfolio holder for housing and to sign the Memorandum of Understanding required by the Department. Scroll down the screen. The Council Tax Reduction Scheme, currently in place for 22-23, be continued for 23-24, and the Deputy Chief Executive be authorised to make minor textual amendments and uprate premiums and inflationary increases where appropriate. Other comments to make is the budget gap of £2.2 million, which was reported in January, has now reduced to £2.035 million. And the changes are detailed in paragraphs 5 to 11 of the Cabinet report. The Financial Stability Programme savings target of £1.9 million, reported also in January, has now reduced to just over £1 million. And again, the details are in Appendix E. This is due to the toilet savings that we are devolving and the retention of special expenses of those that we haven't in Appendix D. Paragraphs 12 to 16 of the Cabinet report outline a more detailed update on the Financial Stability Programme. We all know that 23-24 is still going to be very challenging, and that's for things out of our control. inflation is still rampant, and we are not immune from that, along with the energy crisis. Some points that I brought out at Cabinet that are very, very poignant to our spending. Our waste collection contract swallows up nearly 80% of our total council tax income, leaving us with next to no money to provide all those other services that we do other than the bins. And of course, that's where our investment strategy and things like car parking income are very vital for the work of the council. Inflation alone has eaten over £900,000 out of our available resources. And of that figure of 900,000, 630,000 of that is now a cost increase that's baked into future years, and we can't reduce that. So you'll see that we've started to do, obviously having more mitigation things to do, and that includes the grant funding for the temporary accommodation is a welcome addition, and that's money that we've won, and we'll hopefully see that our overall spending on temporary accommodation in the future will go down. The service planning process that we referred to, and I referred to in the question, Councillor Giawan answered in the question earlier, we'll be able to deliver some quick and easy wins. We're also looking much more now, as interest rates have gone up, at investing our money better, making it work harder, and getting more interest. And some of that is on the overnight money markets, where we can deposit when we finish work, and we can withdraw it again the next day and earn interest overnight. That hasn't been worth happening up until now because of the low interest rates, but now Duncan, our new CFO, is investigating earning more money that way. And indeed, we can get up to about 3.5% on overnight investments. And we expect that to deliver a 6-figure yield in the next year. Other good news is, of course, the levelling up bid. And while this is a long-term ambition, of course, if a lot of money is spent on the Delaware Pavilion and make it more watertight and the building better, that will hopefully in the future be able to reduce the need to give the Delaware quite so much money out of our budget. We're also looking to reclaim stamp duty land tax now that we are a housing provider, and we may get up to £100,000 back as well. And just lastly on the levelling up bit, it was mentioned earlier, we are a competent financial authority, and that is proved by the government giving us a grant of what actually equates to 125% of our normal spending, which I think, as we've already said, is a marvellous achievement for this council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Do we have a second, Dan? Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Any discussion? Councillor Project.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on something that was said at Cabinet, which concerned me somewhat, and it was reported by Councillor Field that someone, unidentified someone, had publicly said a downright lie, said that we had 18 million in reserves and we only had 2 million left. And I just wanted to remind members that we are not like members of Parliament who have privilege. We can be, it's a standards issue if you actually bring the council into disrepute knowingly and deliberately. I was concerned about that because that isn't the only story going round about our so-called incompetence, which tonight has been disproved quite strongly.
Thank you, Councillor Project. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to acknowledge, he's not here this evening, but I mentioned it at Cabinet, our Chief Finance Officer who's moved on to higher and better things. I think he just told us really how it is. He didn't mince any words at all. He gave an awful lot of guidance out there. And bringing this budget together, as he has done, was a tremendous amount of work involved. It's no easy task to look at a crystal ball and say, where might it go? Because the whole global area is totally uncertain. So thank you again to Tony Baden for the work that's done there. And the other factor, which I think we all actually identify, that out of the £4 per week that Rother receive by way of council tax based on a Band D, 70% of that goes on our waste contract. We do a damn good job in providing other services of a discretionary nature And I think that's an acknowledgement to all members supporting our officers in trying to produce that. So all I would like to say is an acknowledgement to the officers that have produced this budget and continue the very good work that they have with limited means. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make a couple of general points. It's been said before that residents get a good deal out of Robert because only 11% of their council tax bill is ours, and the precept which is sneaked on is a lot larger than what we're asking, it's about £1 a month, I think. But talking in a conciliatory manner, the fact that the government decided to keep the index link on pensions, I got a letter from my door yesterday, Friday rather, and the increase in pensions for pensioners is quite substantial this year because it was index linked when inflation was high. So that will help some pensioners to absorb increases in council tax, food increases and fuel costs. And also we've got a large number of residents who are single occupants and they get their percentage of the council tax anyway. But it's a difficult one because I would have accepted a lower settlement on my state pension if more of that had gone to young families to increase benefits.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor John Barnes?
Chairman, I just want to express a sense of considerable unease about this budget. What we have here is very little detail on a savings plan of 1 million. I acknowledge, and I think Councillor Dixon is right, and I acknowledge this at the meeting of overview scrutiny. I think we will be able to meet some of that through improvements of our income. But it is very difficult to vote for a budget which is going to draw down over 2 million in reserves, which leaves a huge headache to the next council, identifies an unspecified million in savings. If we're still planning this at this stage, we're not going to be able to deliver the full saving in the course of the current year. So you have actually to deliver a considerable amount. I just do not see that we are treating our successors fairly. We are leaving them, I think, with a situation where the reserves, usable reserves, which have been quite properly used to support the budget so far, are now going to be threatened with dropping below 5 million. 5 million represents roughly a third of our expenditure, our net expenditure. In a parish council, we are recommended to keep at least 50% in reserve. In a charity, you are recommended to keep 6 months in reserve. We are actually in a position where I think, with the best will in the world, and I trust Councillor Dixon in thinking that he has a robust approach, but I think we are threatened with going to dip further in our reserves next year, and that will take us below the safety level. And I feel, frankly, we should be taking more urgent action now in order to balance the budget, because I think we're leaving a huge headache to our successors.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Vinehall.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't really intending to speak, but it's really triggered a thought. In 2019, it must have been the first or second council meeting, Councillor Barnes congratulated the Alliance for taking up the budget which had been set by the previous Conservative administration in entirety, because he felt that was the right thing to do, and that budget contained also the forward program of reserves and the expectations on revenue and expenses. And we are in pretty much that position, having had to spend another £500,000 on COVID. So if that hadn't happened, we'd be £500,000 better off. I don't think anyone disagrees that this council has needed to take action on expenditure, and of course, had there been council tax increases for 5 years, we would have something like £1 million extra in revenue every year going forward, which would cover a lot of the expenses, and we would have, I can't remember the exact figure, it's around 6 million or 7 million, Councillor Dixon will probably remind me, in reserves. So those errors were made 5, 10, 7 years ago, back in 2015 prior to that. And that is where the problem started, right there. So any administration coming in is not going to resolve a problem that was created at that time. What we have now is a budget that is stable. We have a Bexhill Town Council which is gradually taking on expenses for Bexhill which have always been paid for by the district council. And any of us who are in parish councils know that it's the parish council or town council that are responsible for their expenses in that area, and that was never the case. So Rother District Council has been burdened with something in the order of £1 million, probably more like £1.5 million of expenses every year, going back to the formation of the council in Bexhill and so forth, which they should never have had. And that change will have a major impact over a long period of time into the future. And they are factual statements. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brownhall. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. And I'm not going to do what the previous councillors just done to try and rehearse history, what happened many years ago. What really matters is what's happening. Thank you, Councillor Vinal. If you don't interrupt, it would be good. I think it's really, really important that we look at the future. And as Councillor Barnes has alluded to, there are concerns upon the long-term sustainability of this authority when you look at the way those reserves depleted. Councillor Vinehall just referred to where things went wrong, but the fact of the matter is that for a very long period of time, we managed, even during that period of austerity, to put money in the bank for a rainy day. I think the reserves went up £7 or £8 million during that period, and that's what's really important, making sure that the council is sustainable long term. And I won't be supporting this budget because I don't support the way that this council has employed agency staff at a huge cost. I won't support the way that this council has employed consultants at huge cost. I won't support the way that this council has just blown, and we talk about the 500,000 for COVID, but this administration has just blown in excess of £700,000 on a project that we've heard the leader of the council say probably won't even happen. So it's a bit churlish for members of the administration to talk about spending money wisely when we've over £700,000 there for a project that won't even happen. But if I can rein back on the politics and just talk about the pragmatism for the future, I think what really concerns me is that we are not working, we're not working together enough with other public sector bodies in terms of those shared services. We're perhaps not being radical enough about the way in which we can take those things forward so that we can essentially protect services but still make sure that we are working together with other public sector partners to keep costs down. And I think that's something we need to... I know we've got shared services with other authorities, the joint waste contract, and to be fair, as I've said many times before, Tony Leonard, before he left us, was instrumental in putting together the original joint waste contract, which saved this council a huge amount of money. And we've had a sustainable waste contract ever since. But the fact of the matter remains that we need to be more radical, more forward-thinking in looking to protect the services but work together collectively, whether it be Sussex County Council, I declare interest, Madam Chairman, as I've mentioned East Sussex County Council, but it's other district boroughs within East Sussex and perhaps beyond East Sussex, because I think that we all know that there may be areas that we can work with other authorities that are a considerable distance away, because we know now that working from home is going to be very much a feature of the future. And I just want to see a much more collegiate approach as we go forward. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. This isn't just about costs. It's also about benefits and gains for the council and gains for services, as we've heard from Councillor Coleman about the list of gains in Sidley. And one of the gains that Councillor Maynard criticised just now was about employing agency staff at huge cost. Yes, the planning department did employ agency staff, and the result is we've fixed, or are moving towards fixing, an unsustainable planning situation. Concerning the reserves, Councillor Vine Ball quite rightly pointed out that the origin of the difficulty was that we lost £1 million in revenue and £6 million in reserves compared to what it could have been if only we had increased council tax by the allowable level year on year during the 6 or 7 years that the party opposite failed to do. And that is why we inherited a deficit situation from them, and that is why in their February 2019 budget they projected drawing reserves to the level of £3,101,000. And then in the following year, drawing reserves of £1,904,000, and so on. And this is fact, straight out of your February 2019 cabinet meeting, Councillor Maynard. I just looked it up as I sat down here this evening, and the result is that reserves have been drained year on year based on a budget and a medium-term financial plan put forward by the previous Conservative administration. And we have now got a financial stability plan in place to be able to identify savings, partly through delegation to town and parish councils. And I'd like to commend our Deputy Chief Executive, Lorna Ford, for achieving the miracle of devolving public toilets to, or almost devolving public toilets to Bexhill Town Council. And for putting together a plan for savings, which is going through senior officers at the moment and will be shared with us in due course. And I commend this budget.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cortell. Can we take this to Councillor Oliver?
If I thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a point that, I believe we are well placed. I think we've made progress. We're not there yet, but our external auditors have made comments to the effect that what we are putting in place has a very good chance of getting us to where we want to be. It's not easy. It's an uncertain world. When you look, we've gone through a global pandemic, the impact of Brexit, raging inflation, European war, cost of living. We know we've got a job to do. But I think if we are committed to get that across the line, then we will get there, and it won't be overnight.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Grayson.
Thank you, Chairman. Declare an interest as being a member of Bexhill Town Council. That's the second time I've heard it referred to tonight. The negotiations are taking place. There has been no agreement.
Thank you, Councillor Grayson. Councillor Thomas, did you raise your hand? No? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman, for letting me sum up. I mean, we've heard a lot of rhetoric and a lot of grandstanding, as normal as you do with the budget. But some of the facts have been already articulated by Councillor Oliver. But we are now where you planned us to be. 4 years ago, we are where you planned us to be with reserves, within £64,000, which, given the COVID pandemic, I think is a pretty good result. the fact that you think that we're not aware of the situation, officers and members are acutely aware of the situation. In all the meetings that we have, FSP, the budget and balancing the books are always talked about. But as Councillor Oliver says, where has this come from? Well, it comes from the government settlement that we get in December to and then have to put a budget together for January. Ridiculous. The government funding of local councils, and in particular district councils, ridiculous. We're just not given enough to survive. And the government then restricts what we can then raise by council tax. Not that we really want to raise council tax, admittedly, but we can still only do it by, what is it, £2.70 a year? No, £5.22 a year, sorry. 10 pence a week. 10 pence a week is all we can raise our council tax by. £198.60 that a bandee pays Rother District Council is not enough to get us through. And that is the problem that we have, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why we have to do all of these other things to get in income. And then when we think we're getting there, we have a massive inflation hike, an energy crisis. This isn't easy, and it's not going to be easy for some time. But just to sum up, we are very well placed.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. A vote by roll call needs to be taken for the substantive motion and any amendments made thereto. The Deputy Monitoring Officer will read out the names of each member present and record those for and against and abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor John Barnes.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Barnes.
Against.
Councillor Bayliss.
For.
Councillor Brewerton.
Against.
Councillor Brown. Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Carroll.
Against.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Coleman.
For.
Councillor Mrs Cook.
For.
Councillor Portell.
For.
Councillor Curtis. Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Drayson.
For.
Councillor Mrs Earl Williams. Councillor Errington. Councillor Field. Councillor Ganley. Councillor Gordon.
Against.
Councillor Gray. Councillor Hacking. Councillor Harmer.
For.
Councillor Langlands. Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Maynard. Councillor Mear.
For.
Councillor Mooney. Councillor Norton. Councillor Oliver. Councillor Osborne. Councillor Proshak.
For.
Councillor Stevens. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Timpey.
For.
Councillor Vinehall.
For.
That's carried. Thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 9. To receive the report of the Director of Place and Climate Change on the officer delegations in respect of the planning services. Councillor Vinehall.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this is really a report which brings a number of changes which have already been agreed by the Planning Committee unanimously, I should point out, into one place in the Constitution to tidy up a lot of loose ends. I think that's probably the best way of saying it. I think the things that affect members' perception mainly are changes which improve the ability of the planning department to enforce more quickly, and I think they're all very good changes. There's a lot of detail in here if you're not into the planning language. So I'm very happy to answer questions if the chair allowed, and also to embed in the Constitution, for example, the need for the officers to bring to the planning committee any changes which are either have a financial impact or on affordable housing to the planning committee before decision. I think that they're the two that really, I think, hit home. There is one amendment I would like to add in this report, and I draw everyone's attention to page 29, if you'd like to turn there, because I'm sure you probably need to see it. And it's on item 3.17, and it's line 10, and it says, under exceptional circumstances, the chair of the planning committee be granted authority to call in an application. So, as you know, the call-in period runs up to a week after the end of the pink notice period, and there can be circumstances where, for some reason, a member may ask for an application to be brought in. Some sort of circumstances. They don't have to be exceptional circumstances, because I don't know what exceptional means in this circumstance, quite frankly. They just have to be some sort of circumstances. And that doesn't mean I forgot or I'd like to do it, or the applicant has put pressure on me. There has to be a real circumstances. I think I've had 2 requests in the last couple of years from different parties on both sides, if you like, and I've actually refused both of those requests because neither were really satisfactory in terms of a true reason. So I'm going to suggest the amendment that the words under exceptional circumstances be removed, and in the next line, the word be changed to is. So it would read, the chair of the planning committee is granted authority to call in an application at any time before a decision is issued. So with that, unless the chair wants to give me permission to answer any questions, because these things are fine, I'm putting that motion forward with that amendment.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Councillor Projak. Could we take this to the vote? All those in favour?
I welcome what Councillor Vinehall has said there. I've always I've never liked the call-in procedure as it is currently, because you've got to second guess an application. So you've got an application comes in, you've got to sort of read through it and almost second guess whether you call it in or not. And previously, we used to get the D notice and it would give the officer's recommendation, and you could then look at it and say, oh, no. Oh, no, that's going to cause me a whole world of pain. I'll get that one called in. But now you've got to guess first, and you almost sort of, the trouble is some applications take so long that do you call it in or not? You've got to guess if something's going to be controversial, which just makes it awkward. And if we had the system where you used to get the recommendation, you could then call it in or not if you didn't agree with the recommendation, and then it went to committee. So if we've got one in Winchelsea Beach at the moment where we're being inundated with people and emails, and you think, well, this needs to go to committee, but we're probably too late. So perhaps Councillor Vinehall could call that to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Bayliss.
Yes, thank you. Well, Councillor Osborne, first of all, I'd say actually I know it doesn't quite take as long as it used to, because as somebody alluded to earlier, we are improving our turnaround of planning applications, and for somebody who works a lot with developers and in terms of economic development, that is a really good news story, and I welcome the fact that we've had some consultants working with us on planning. I would say to you, I refer quite a lot of planning applications. They don't all come to committee, because when I look at the application, when I look at the ones that are for Central Ward, I say I'd like to refer this to committee if it is refused or if it is approved or whatever. So you may not always see the applications that I refer, but they are referred. I go through each one each week when I get the notice.
Councillor Bayliss, thank you very much. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman, and I have some sympathy with Councillor Osborne, I think, and not wishing to denigrate Councillor Bayliss, but I think the countryside is different from maybe the town. And certainly some countryside applications can sometimes be rather controversial, which you didn't expect them to be, and a whole tide of objections from local people that you weren't expecting. And Councillor Osborne's right, we do have to second guess what the planning officer often thinks. So maybe, Councillor Vinehall, you'll take these comments away, and maybe it's time to maybe review the what was the D list. I'm not saying the D list was the answer. That was clearly quite a lot of work to put a list out every day. But something maybe, in between the two systems, maybe something that the new council, the new planning committee may be able to look at.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. And we do need to stick to the report, if you don't mind. Councillor Mooney.
Bring back the D notice.
Sorry, I've just been reminded we have to keep to the facts with the report, please.
Oh.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Councillor Thomas.
Chair, can I just say that I welcome these changes. In my area, and I'm sure other councillors have the same experience, there are problems with enforcement, and it can cause a lot of stress and distress to residents when they're aware that planning conditions are not being observed, and they are constantly emailing the council about these difficulties, indeed emailing me about them as well, and they feel that action isn't taken as promptly as it could be. So these measures are to be warmly welcomed.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair. Contextualising this report, I would observe it is much more difficult to follow current procedure than it was when we had a D list.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Can we now take it to the vote, please?
Have a right to reply very quickly to that, because I think it's important to answer those questions. I think it's a case of partly making the planning department more efficient, and it has become very efficient, moving from a 25% turnover staff to a stable staff, bringing application levels down to well below where they were in 2019.
Councillor Vinehall, are we still on the same
yes,
report?
Yes, it's very important. To respond to the question on D-list, and which is covered within this report, firstly, you can always put a conditional call in, and that's really important. And the second change within these changes here that is important is that previously, if you asked an officer, where do you think you're going on this, refuse or approve, one, they didn't have to tell you, and two, they often didn't tell you. Now, they are actually required to tell you. And if they don't tell you, then you can put the conditional call in. And I think most people have found that a pretty successful way to do it. So you do have to be a little bit sharper as they come through, and a bit more aware of what's going on your patch, if you like, what's going to be sensitive, what isn't. Quite frankly, I think most people are. I really do. So anyway, I'll just make that point.
Thank you, Councillor Vinehall. Can we now take that to vote, please? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. On to item 10. In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 13, consideration be given to the motion to Council which has been submitted by myself as detailed in your agenda. Holocaust Memorial Day. Holocaust Memorial Day was established on the 27th of January 2000 when representatives from 46 countries around the world met in Stockholm to discuss Holocaust education, remembrance and research. At the end of this meeting, all attendees signed a declaration committing to preserving the memory of those who were murdered in the Holocaust. At that time, Rotherham District Council moved a motion of support in December 2021. It is therefore considered timely to recommit again to the ethos behind the movement, and it's proposed that the following motion be supported. We recognise that the Holocaust shook the foundations of modern civilisation. Its unprecedented character and horror will always hold universal meaning. We believe the Holocaust must have a permanent place in our nation's community's collective memory. We honour the survivors still with us and reaffirm our shared goals of mutual understanding and justice. We must make sure that future generations understand the causes of the Holocaust and reflect upon its consequences. We vow to remember the victims of Nazi persecution and of all genocides. We value the sacrifices of those who have risked their lives to protect or rescue victims as a touchstone of the human capacity for good in the face of evil. We recognise that humanity is still scarred by the belief that race, religion, disability or sexuality makes some people's lives worth less than others. Genocide, anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia and discrimination still continue. We have a shared responsibility to fight these evils. We pledge to strengthen our efforts to promote education and research about the Holocaust and other genocides. We will do our utmost to make sure that the lessons of such events are fully learned. We will continue to encourage Holocaust remembrance by organising an activity to commemorate the Holocaust Memorial Day. We condemn the evils of prejudice, discrimination and racism. We value a free, respectful and democratic society. Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cortell. Any discussion? Councillor Cortell.
I need to redeclare my interest in this motion as being of Jewish heritage. During World War II, my late mother was a counterintelligence officer. Had Hitler won, she'd have been fortunate to have been shot to avoid the agony of a gas chamber. The murder of 6 million Jews cannot be allowed to be forgotten. Similarly, as Councillor Harmer has just pointed out, we cannot be allowed to forget other genocides, whether in the Balkans, Rwanda, Burundi, the late Pol Pot in Cambodia, or the Kurdish genocide. Perhaps Holocaust Memorial Day needs to be extended to include other genocides, but the Holocaust from World War II should not be forgotten.
Thank you, Councillor Costello. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to you, Councillor Harmer, for giving this opportunity to reflect and remember the millions of innocent lives that were lost and the unspeakable tragedies that were committed during the Holocaust. I think whilst we may never fully comprehend the depths of suffering and pain endured by those who lived through the Holocaust, we must strive to learn from the past and work towards creating a world where such horrors can never be repeated. The memory of the Holocaust serves as a reminder of the importance of standing up against anti-Semitism, bigotry, hatred and discrimination in all its forms. We must continue to work towards creating a society that values diversity, promotes inclusivity and upholds the inherent worth and dignity of every single human being. Thank you for allowing us to give this motion air, even though it's quite a long meeting, but I think it's really important for us to give this topic an airing and to renew our commitment as a council to building a world where such atrocities are never allowed to happen again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Clark.
In the 1970s, I went to work for a charity in Poland called the Stu Ryder Foundation, and I married a local Polish girl, actually in Poland. I went 3 times to Auschwitz over a period of 20 years, and the lessons of history must never be forgotten. In Polish schools, every child visits Auschwitz before it finishes their education, and that should happen in our schools as well. If it can't happen again, what's happening in Ukraine at the moment, innocent people are dying, women, children. So lessons of history should never be forgotten.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Councillor John Barnes.
Chairman, I rise to support this motion. If I had any doubt about it, it is whether the word causes is strong enough. What happened in Germany and in Russia under the Nazi regime was pure evil. It's not simply the death camps, but the massacres that took place at death gangs in places in the Ukraine, in the Baltic states. It is uniquely horrifying. It's right to remember other genocides, most of them, I think, taking their roots in ethnic cleansing. But I think the Nazi Holocaust is almost unique in really trying to weed out every kind of person who was regarded as somehow not fully Aryan. And that actually renders it something we need to remember, learn from, but above all, make sure our young, the next generations, do understand that. Because what is terrifying about the mass media is the way that Holocaust denial is spreading and getting increasing numbers of hits on the internet. And that really is damaging and dangerous, and we need to find a way of countering it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Blewerton. Thank you, Councillor Blewerton. Sorry for your loss. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. I think we should also mention the work of the Simon Wiesenthal Trust. We have people perpetrating awful war crimes in Ukraine, also in the other conflicts that have been mentioned. And that trust has made sure that those people will always be looking over their shoulders. It doesn't matter if you're 70, 80 or 90. If it can be proved that you were party to a war crime, you will be tracked down and you will be held responsible. Some people say it's inhuman to take maybe someone who was a guard, a maybe lowly guard in a death camp, when they're 80 or 90 and put them on trial. I'm sorry, you can almost look at that as collateral damage, but these people have to send this message down through history that it will not be forgotten. You can't perpetrate atrocities in Ukraine and then go home and settle down to being a middle-class Russian for the next 30 years. That won't happen. We'll find you. So let's also look at the work done by people like Simon Wiesenthal, people who keep that spirit alive and keep a warning in front of every one of us, should we ever be in a position to fight for our country, that we fight properly within the rules of the Geneva Convention, and we're never, ever a party to any sort of war crime. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Byrne. Should we take this to vote? All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Which takes me on to item 11. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 13, consideration be given to the motion to Council which has been submitted by Councillor Brian Drayson as detailed in your agenda. Councillor Drayson.
Thank you, Chair. I don't intend going through it word for word, you'll be glad to hear. The motion speaks for itself as we go into elections for parish and district councils across the country. It is important that people from all walks of life can disagree with each other in an atmosphere of mutual respect without being subjected to intimidation or abuse, whether in person, in writing, or as more likely now, social media, particularly Facebook. Someone might not like my ideas, many don't seem to, or what I've said, or even the way I've voted, and are free to express their views, but that doesn't mean they can insult or threaten me. Most worthwhile things are achieved through debate, cooperation and compromise. If we listen to each other and respect the other person's right to disagree with us, then who knows, we both may change our views a little. This motion seeks to sign Rother District Council up to the LGA's Debate Not Hate campaign and ensure that we have the necessary tools in place should any of us, or indeed our town and parish colleagues, find ourselves on the receiving end of threatening and abusive behaviour. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Grayson. Do we have a seconder? Am I allowed to second that? I was going to second it. Amen. Anyone like to speak on this? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I support this, and if you hadn't seconded, I would have. You may or may not know, a few weeks before Christmas, or last 3 or 4 months of last year, I had an issue on social media with someone totally unknown to me, not in my area, nowhere near, never spoke to them, never heard of them, not a thing, no knowledge at all. But evidently, I was spending nights next to their house in a drugs den taking crystal meth. So this went on for a few weeks, and you sort of ignore it, and you think, oh, well, whatever, nutcase. And then you sort of start to think about it, and you think, well, hang about. Anybody, this is worldwide, anybody can see this. You know, and then you look on, they've got, however many tens of thousands of followers or whatever. You think, well, I don't know. So, and then you start sort of losing sleep over it, and then you just feel irritated. So I went to the old Bill. I went to the police, and they sort of gave me a crime number and said, there's no lines of inquiry. Weird. So I did my own lines of inquiry. So I spent a couple of hours researching this person. So I found out where they live, or within a couple of houses, because they had an issue with their next door neighbour as well. And then this person started on Sussex Police as well, and someone else. So I made up a little dossier, and I went back to the police, and I said, there you go, deal with that. And they sort of ummed and ahed a bit, and then I sort of left it a couple of weeks, went back again. Someone else had complained. So then it was a different story. So the police then came to my house, took a statement and everything else, and then they went and knocked on their door. And they got given a community protection order, told not to make malicious communications on social media, letter, email, anything else, with a whole list of people who they've been attacking. And then, to their credit, the police rang me over Christmas, as it was, and one Sunday afternoon. Luckily, 1 in the morning, I've been riding my bike. So he rang me one Sunday afternoon and said, oh, anything else? I said, no, it's all gone quiet. Since middle of December, it's all gone quiet. He said, well, that's good. We thought that. We're just ringing around people. And we make sure. But you just think, why can someone do that? How can someone do that? Just because of what? I don't know. And you do sort of question. Sometimes you question why you bother. You think, well, if it was someone you cheesed off, someone had got planning permission when they didn't, or whatever, you can understand it. But just a random person from nowhere, you have no idea who they are. Can spout rubbish. Funny world.
Sorry to hear that, Paul. Councillor Pojak.
Thank you. Just as a point of information, Chair, that today we had our member development meeting, and one of the things that has come up is about member training for social media, particularly as we're getting into the election and the rules. And I understand this is being arranged before we go into PERDA, so-called PERDA. And I think it would be useful for all councillors to be reminded of the rules of engagement, as it were, on social media, particularly coming up to an election. Thank you for this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Pojak. Councillor Field.
Yes, thank you. I would also like to thank Councillor Grayson for this motion, and I do think that Councillor Osborne hit the nail on the head. It isn't we in this chamber, because we can regulate our own behaviour, and I think on the whole we do. It is the random stranger who derives bizarre pleasure from terrorising other people from a distance and in privacy. And I'm astonished that Councillor Osborne managed to identify the person attacking him. But I think it's very important that we all remember that should this happen to us, we are victims of a crime and that we mustn't be ashamed and we must go and seek help from professionals, from those who can help us. And I am very pleased that this council, amongst its office staff, have mental health champions in the offices who can signpost people to the help they need to deal with any issues they're having. We don't have it as members, but I hope, or perhaps we could be issued with a list of people within the council who could help us and be our first port of call if we experience this very distressing business. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor John Barnes.
Chairman, I too think this is a worthwhile initiative, but I hope we can take it a little further and possibly ask the Audit Committee under Councillor Drayson's chairmanship to press the LGA again to reintroduce, or get the government to reintroduce, some sanctions for this behaviour. There is at least one parish council in East Sussex at the moment that is totally at war with one another and can get no business done. It's a miracle they did actually agree the precept. But 3 clerks so far have resigned because they cannot make the council work. Without sanctions, I fear codes of practice really are not enough. I wish they were. I think we do behave with reasonable dignity in this council. My own parish council works well, and if we differ politely. The one other change which would make a difference is beyond the scope of local government, but not beyond the scope of government. I think if platforms for social media were made publishers and not simply regarded as platforms, it would be an enormous improvement to political dialogue in this country.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Bayliss.
Yes, thank you very much. And, I will extend my sort of sympathy to Councillor Osborne for the treatment that he received and actually for the bravery in taking those steps to actually report it to the police and to move forward. As somebody who engages in social media on a sort of regular basis, I think of it as a way of informing the public of what I'm doing as their local councillor. Of course, that attracts occasionally some negative comments, and sometimes something more than negative comments, some derogatory comments. I don't wish to repeat them. I don't wish to repeat them now. But if you believe them, my broomstick is parked outside the town hall, and it's just not acceptable. I mean, I have now taken the approach of blocking all of those people who make derogatory comments. And I would say that I thank you, Councillor Drayson, for bringing this to the fore. I want 2 messages. Number 1, if you're thinking of standing for the council, and people do say this to me, don't be put off by these people who are trolling you on social media. Do not be put off by them. It is, I think it has the potential to destroy democracy. And actually, if we go back to the previous motion, it's the start of that, creeping, if you like, sorry? Malaise, thank you. That creeping malaise that leads to extreme, politics. So I would say that to them. The second thing is that actually it would be really good if the council could look at some way of providing some legal cover for councillors. I know that I've spoken to the Chief Executive about someone making allegations about perceived conflicts of interest that I had, which were not true, were just not true. apparently there was nothing I could do, apart from paying out myself several £100s to a solicitor to issue a desist notice. So those are the two things I would add to this debate. Nobody's going to put me off using social media, because it is a really effective way of talking to your residents and the people that you're here to serve and work for. But I think it needs more control, and thank you for bringing this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bayliss. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman. And firstly, I must be careful about what I say about Councillor Osborne's Friday cakes, in case he doesn't like it and comes and finds me. On 13 years consecutive service on the Audit Committee, you do get to see all of the complaints and things that happen at parish councils. And as Councillor Barnes said earlier, they can be dysfunctional, for want of a better word, and also there can be a lot of vitriol and hatred that goes around a smaller amount of people. So I really don't want to propose an amendment. So maybe I could ask Councillor Drayson that if you could add on another point to this, and that Rother District Council undertakes to inform its parish councils of this campaign and encourage them to sign up.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dixon. We take it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. So now we skip on to 14A, to consider nominations for the appointment of Chair of the Council for 2023-24, without prejudice to the local elections in May 2023, and if necessary to determine that nomination by a secret ballot. Are there any nominations, please, for the appointment of Chair of Rother for 23-24? Councillor Field.
Thank you. To my knowledge, all the time I've been on the council, we've always done this at this time of year. And I've always considered it singularly bizarre, particularly in the run-up to an election, because we have no idea who among us is going to be here next May. And we have no idea, and we can't be certain, that just because you've been nominated to be chair of the council, you're actually going to get re-elected. And then we all look fairly daft. So I would like to propose that we defer this item until the first meeting after the election. Thank you.
Second, Councillor Pojak. All in favour?
All in favour.
Yay, a really good decision.
Item 14.
Item 14B, similar kind of thing, nomination of Vice Chair. We're going to go the same way. Yes, all in agreement. Yay, that's done. So, I can see you're all itching to get home. It's been a long night. I wish everyone well in the elections, and just be nice. Thank you, everybody, and that's the end of the meeting. Bye-bye. 9:17.